So today we are going to look at the classic study in AS level psychology, which is in the cognitive approach by Baddeley in 1966, called Acoustic and Semantic Similarity in Long-Term Memory. So because it's a classic study, you must learn everything about the study: aim, method, conclusion, results, evaluation, because you could be asked anything, or it could be an extended mark question, it's an 8-mark question on the study, or it could be shorter questions asking about aim, individual procedure, etc., etc. So a little bit of background really on why this study was carried out by Baddeley. So Baddeley wanted to see whether long-term memory and short-term memory were different, or whether the view that memory existed on a continuum was accurate. So Baddeley wanted to investigate the effects of both semantic and acoustic coding. In other words, how is information processed and coded in short-term and long-term memory? So by semantic information, we mean we process information according to the meaning of it. Okay, so it's a lot deeper processing, whereas acoustic coding is based on the sound of the word, which is not as deep. So the aim of this study was to investigate the influence of acoustic, so sound, and semantic, meaning word similarity, on the way we learn and recall in both short-term and long-term memory. So this is obviously done by giving participants word lists to remember, which are similar sounding and similar in meaning, and then trying to investigate which word lists participants will recall the most or the best. So we're going to go through the procedure. So it was a lab experiment, and a lot of the studies in the cognitive approach are carried out in a lab experiment, which obviously makes them all the more reliable and valid. So it's a good study. 72 participants were volunteers from an applied psychology research unit and included a mixture of both male and female participants. Once they were selected, participants were assigned to one of 4 conditions in an independent measures design. So by an independent measures design, we mean participants only took part in one of the 4 conditions they were allocated. Okay. Once they were allocated to one of the conditions, so we'll go through all the conditions in the next slide, participants were then presented with a list of 10 words, okay, which they were presented aloud on a tape recorder, okay, at a rate of 1 word every 3 seconds. Okay, and then they had obviously 40 seconds to write down as many of the 10 words that they could. Then participants were given a task involving memory for digits, so they had to recall some numbers. They were then asked to recall the 10 original words in the correct order. Now this process was repeated, so it was repeated 4 times with 4 different lists of words. They were then given 15-minute interference task, okay, which is copying 8-digit sequences. And then they were obviously retested on the 10 words again later, okay. The 4 conditions then, which they were allocated to, were list A, list B, list C, list D. So these relate to the 4 conditions. So the first conditions were acoustically similar words, such as man, can, map, cat. So as you can see, they're quite similar sounding and might even rhyme. So these are acoustically similar because they sound the same. List B, or condition 2, is acoustically different words or dissimilar words, which were closely matched to list A, so mat, cow, and pit. However, they did not sound alike and they were totally different in sound. List 3, or list C, semantically similar words. So these were words that were very similar in terms of their meaning. So examples include great, large, big, etc. And then condition 4 was semantically different words, so dissimilar words. So again, matched as closely as possible to list C. good, huge, deep. So obviously these words are semantically different, so there's no relation in terms of meaning. Okay, so participants are obviously allocated to one of these 4 conditions. Results. Now, the recall of the acoustically similar or similar sounding words and the words that didn't sound the same was very similar. So there wasn't really much difference between conditions 1 and conditions 2. Okay, and what this suggests really is that acoustic coding, so according to sound, did not really affect long-term memory recall. However, recall of the semantically similar, so the words that were obviously similar in terms of meanings, was less than the semantically different words. So, in other words, the recall of the semantic, so similar sounding, similar meaning words was less than the word list condition 4, which had semantically different. This suggests that semantic similarity did actually affect recall in long-term memory, because participants obviously recalled more words that were semantically different compared to semantically similar. The conclusion. So really the conclusion here is that short-term memory is affected largely by acoustic coding, because we do process a lot of short-term memory information acoustically according to the sound, whereas long-term memory is affected by semantic coding. So remember we said at the start that semantic coding is a lot more deeper processing, so hence why the long-term memory does tend to code things according to the meaning. So there's a list of evaluations here. Like I said, there are loads of evaluations, and we're just going to go through a few, okay? So firstly, we do not learn word lists such as ones used in the study as part of everyday context, okay? Now, a lot of the studies in the cognitive approach do use lab experiments, and they can be deemed, you could say, artificial tasks, okay? And they do lack something called mundane realism. So the task itself isn't really representative of something that you would do in everyday life. So that's a weakness. Lacked ecological validity, okay? So obviously being a lab experiment, it did lack ecological validity because the environment itself and the tasks were not realistic for the participants. So their behaviour may have been different. Conducted in a lab setting with standardised procedure. So again, this is a strength because obviously, as I said earlier, a lab experiment does enable a good level of control to be obtained over the variables, and that makes it replicable and adds to reliability. The cause and effect relationship, again, between IV and DV established. So all this means is we can change the IV and then measure the direct effect on the dependent variable because it's in a lab experiment. So again, strength. Application. This study is used to help students revise for exams, and I say we could encourage really students to try and process information semantically, especially if they've got lots of exams and we need to put that information into long-term memory. Okay, so there's plenty of other evaluation points you could make on this study, and I would use the grave method, okay, to think of some more evaluations. So generalizability is about your obviously sample, your population, reliability, application, validity, and obviously ethics. Ethically, there wasn't really any problems with this research, so it's pretty sound ethically. Okay, so that's the study, the classic study by Baddeley. So have another look through the slides and read the textbook to make sure that you understand the study in detail.